Hi everyone, lesson 4. Last week we looked at how our values, how our worldview, how our way of seeing things and what are our norms might be a stumbling block instead of a stepping stone to those we're working with. It might lead us to wrongly interpret and to make assumptions. So today we're going to look at how others see things. So just being aware of how others that we work with see things, they're also going to come with their own worldview. Their values will be different, even if they're Christians. They might agree that Christians can watch TV, but we might differ on what we think is permissible and what isn't. So we're all going to have these values in continuums. We just need to be aware of that and not making those assumptions. I have been terrible at this in the past, thinking, oh, yay, this is a Bible-believing Christian. We're just going to get on fine. But to find that actually we differ in views. So another one is the acceptance of a person's standpoint is not the same as tolerating or condoning sinful behavior. We can still accept that person without condoning the behavior. We certainly will try to encourage them to think about how they've arrived at those views and values. So we will be challenged. I have dealt with some counselees, female counselees who have had issues with porn and who are in same-sex relationships. So this is why we need to be gospel-centered Christians and counselors, because we can't look at those things and say, well, that's terrible. But actually, you and I have terrible, respectable sins ourselves, but they're just a little more respectable. But they still have the same root. They're still, in God's eyes, a problem, a sin, rebellion against Him, wanting our own way. So, just forewarning so that you're not tripped up with these things. Ours is to present the love of Christ and the truth of Christ. The Holy Spirit will do the convicting, the rebuking, and the encouraging. So what are their norms? What are their norms? Did they grow up in a family of violence? Or was their norm to have devotional times as a family? Was blended families their norms? Or being with solo mother, was that their norm? So we forget all these traditions that we take for granted, like maybe family holidays. That's not everyone's norm. So just to be aware of these. Also, Proverbs warns us that there are always two sides to every story. So to be careful that we're always listening to think about what the other side of the story could be, particularly in marriage counselling, or in fact in any counselling. There's always two sides to every story. So be curious. Again, we can only work with the people's perception of the situation. Let's face it, our perceptions change as we grow older. Experience and life circumstances change our perspectives. For any of us who have had adult children who have become parents, you'll know how their perspective has changed, how suddenly they understand a lot of the things that we did as parents. So we can only work with the perspectives they do bring. Obviously, some perspectives will be distorted, and we need to pray for wisdom on that. But again, it's God's job to bring truth and light to that situation. We can't force them to change their perspective. We can only gently guide and lead, and many things God has to deal with. Other differences are gender. If you're doing marriage counselling, just male and female, we think very differently. Culture. We are becoming a multicultural nation, and we need to be aware that as Pakeha, we have our own blindness to the strengths and weaknesses of our culture. So we might take for granted our cultural norms, but they're not other cultural norms. So just to be aware of that. And we don't need to be afraid of other cultures, even if they might be attached to a scary religion such as that being Islam. You know, I read an article the other day that all culture is a gift from God. And in heaven, there will continue to be distinct cultures. We're not going to become a homogeny of one culture. So, you know, every culture is actually a facet of the glory of God. So again, because we have a robust gospel, because we believe in the exclusivity of Christ, we can be inclusive without being afraid. Finally, to see the person as a whole. Find out about their home situation, their relationships, their hobbies, their work. Get to know them. Be curious. Take a genuine interest in them. Love them well. Thanks.